A shadow moves between ancient pines, a winged silhouette against the mist. This is the Tengu, Japan's most enigmatic mountain spirit, a being of terrifying power and profound wisdom whose true story has remained hidden for centuries. By the end of this journey, you will understand the secret role these spirits played in shaping Japan's history and spiritual landscape. We will uncover why a creature once feared as a harbinger of war became a guardian of sacred knowledge, and what its legendary long nose truly symbolizes. What kind of power do you think a being of the wild mountains would value most? The name Tengu itself offers our first clue, translating directly as heavenly dog. This celestial title points not to the mountains of Japan, but to the skies of ancient China. There, the Tengu was a fearsome omen, a celestial dog or comet whose appearance foretold war, chaos, and the fall of emperors. It was a raw, untamed force of nature, a harbinger from the heavens. When these concepts crossed the sea to Japan, something remarkable began to happen. The heavenly dog started to change. It grew wings, it gained a human-like form, and most importantly, it descended from the sky to the earth, finding a home in the deepest, most sacred mountain forests. This was the beginning of its transformation from a distant, celestial warning into an immediate, tangible spirit of the wild. The early Japanese Buddhist establishment viewed them with deep suspicion, seeing Tengu not as gods to be worshipped, but as disruptive demons. They were the ultimate corruptors, the tempters of pious monks. A Tengu's greatest power in these early tales was its ability to mimic enlightenment, to appear as a Buddha or a deceased loved one, all to lead a devout soul astray from the true path. Why would a spiritual tradition portray a mountain spirit in such a sinister light? The answer lies in the very landscape they inhabited. The mountains were the last bastions of the old, indigenous kami, the native gods of Japan. Buddhism, as a newly arrived and organized religion, saw these wild places and their powerful, non-Buddhist spirits as a direct threat to its authority. The Tengu became the perfect symbol for this spiritual conflict, a magnificent, dangerous, and deeply intelligent representation of the old world resisting the new. So the long nose, that most famous feature, began not as a mark of wisdom, but as a symbol of pride, arrogance, and a deceptive nature. It was a physical manifestation of the lies they would tell. But as we will see, this perception was not destined to last. A profound shift was on the horizon, one that would see these demonic tricksters reborn as revered protectors of sacred knowledge. Yet this conflict could not contain the Tengu's wild spirit forever. Their physical forms began to evolve, crystallizing into two distinct types that reveal a deeper story. The first is the Karasu Tengu, or the Crow Tengu. Imagine a creature with the body of a muscular man, but the head of a crow or a hawk. Its face is a sharp beak, its shoulders are adorned with powerful, black wings, and it moves with the fierce, predatory energy of the mountain itself. This is the form that most closely connects to the Tengu's ancient, untamed origins, a direct echo of the wild and often dangerous forces of nature. They are the forest's sharp-eyed sentinels, the swift enforcers of the deeper woods. But then there is the Yamabushi Tengu, also known as the Daitengu or Great Tengu. This is the being most people picture. Its form is almost entirely human, distinguished by an intensely red face and that legendary, impossibly long nose, which can sometimes be said to resemble a small wooden staff. This Tengu is no mere bird demon. It is a majestic, solitary king, often depicted wearing the tiny cap and robes of a mountain ascetic, holding a feather fan made from 7 feathers, a symbol of its immense spiritual authority. The long nose, once a symbol of deceit, has transformed. Now it signifies supreme intelligence, deep knowledge, and a pride born of true power. Why would these two forms exist side by side? The Karasu Tengu represents the raw, untamed power of the wilderness, while the Yamabushi Tengu embodies the refined, esoteric wisdom that can be mastered by living in harmony with that same wild power. One is the wild force, the other is the conscious mind that learns to command it. This evolution in form marks a pivotal shift in the Tengu's destiny, a journey from feared outsider to a being worthy of reverence, a transformation that would see them become the secret mentors to some of Japan's most legendary heroes. These majestic beings were not scattered randomly across the wilderness. They established their kingdoms in the most spiritually potent mountains of Japan, places where the veil between worlds is thin. One of their most famous and powerful domains is Mount Kurama, north of Kyoto. This mountain is not merely a forest. It is considered a living entity, a colossal body of earth and stone pulsating with spiritual energy. Here, the Tengu are not just residents. They are the guardians of the mountain's profound secrets and the masters of its esoteric power. To step onto the paths of Mount Kurama is to enter the Tengu's sovereign territory, a place where they have trained legendary warriors and mystics for centuries. Further south, near the modern sprawl of Tokyo, lies Mount Takao. Even today, it remains a stronghold of the Tengu, its slopes dotted with statues and shrines dedicated to these spirits. This mountain serves as a vibrant training ground, a place where the boundary between the human and spiritual worlds feels almost permeable. But perhaps the most breathtaking of all their realms is the sprawling Yoshino mountain range, a sea of peaks blanketed in thousands of cherry trees. In the spring, when the blossoms fall like pink snow, this landscape becomes a visual poem of ephemeral beauty and hidden power. The Yoshino Mountains are described as a vast, secluded kingdom for the Tengu, a network of hidden valleys and cloud-ringed peaks where their society thrives far from human eyes. Why would these powerful spirits choose such specific and magnificent places? These mountains are natural power centers, geological antennas drawing energy from the earth. For the Tengu, they are more than home. They are sanctuaries, libraries of ancient knowledge, and military academies all in one. A human seeking true power would not find it in a temple in the city, but by journeying into the heart of these domains, ready to face the tests of the mountain and its winged lords. Their role as mountain kings came with a sacred duty, a fierce guardianship over both the natural world and the spiritual laws that govern it. These are not passive spirits. They are active enforcers of a cosmic balance, and they punish arrogance with terrifying swiftness. One famous legend tells of a group of samurai who, in a display of pride, decided to test their blades by cutting down ancient, sacred trees deep within a Tengu's forest. As they raised their swords, a sudden, unnatural wind roared through the clearing. It did not feel like a gust of air, but like the mountain itself exhaling in fury. The samurai were lifted from their feet and thrown through the trees, their bodies battered and their spirits broken. They had not been attacked by a monster they could fight. They were corrected by the very environment the Tengu commands. This is the core of their protection. To harm the mountain is to harm the Tengu, and the retaliation is an absolute elemental force. Their guardianship extends beyond the physical realm into the spiritual. They became, paradoxically, fierce protectors of the Buddhist Dharma, the very teachings that once labeled them demons. How did this happen? The Tengu do not protect the religion's institutions or its human politics. They safeguard the purity of its deepest truths. They are said to despise hypocrisy above all else. A corrupt monk who uses his position for wealth or power might find himself confronted by a Yamabushi Tengu in the dead of night. The spirit would not attack him physically, but would engage him in a profound debate on the scriptures, exposing the monk's hollow understanding and spiritual bankruptcy. Failure in such a contest could result in the monk losing his sanity or his life. In this way, the Tengu act as divine auditors, weeding out the unworthy and ensuring that only those with genuine intent can access the highest teachings. They guard the Dharma not for the sake of Buddhism, but for the sake of truth itself. Their long noses, once a symbol of lies, now seem to sniff out the faintest scent of corruption and pride. This dynamic establishes a profound pact. The mountains provide sanctuary and power to the Tengu, and in return, the Tengu ensure that these sacred spaces remain unspoiled and that the spiritual energy flowing through them remains pure. They are the arbiters of a wild, untamable justice, maintaining a balance that human laws could never hope to achieve. Yet, for all their noble guardianship, the Tengu possess a deeply chaotic and unpredictable nature. Their long noses can sniff out pride, but they also seem to twitch with a love for pure, unadulterated mischief. When not enforcing cosmic balance, these spirits delight in leading travelers in circles through impenetrable fog, hiding household objects, or creating phantom sounds that echo through lonely valleys. This is not always malevolent. It is the natural playfulness of the wild, a reminder that the forest is alive with a consciousness that does not always follow human rules. But this trickster spirit has a far darker, more dangerous edge. Throughout Japanese history, moments of great social upheaval and civil war were often attributed to the invisible hand of the Tengu. They were seen as master manipulators, stirring the embers of ambition and conflict in the hearts of powerful men. The most famous example is the Tengu's Revolt, a term used to describe the political machinations that plunged the imperial court into chaos in the 12th century. It was said that the Tengu secretly gathered in their mountain halls not to train a hero, but to plot the downfall of the state, orchestrating a rebellion from the shadows. Why would they incite war? Their motives are complex. It could be a form of cosmic correction, toppling a corrupt and arrogant ruling class, or it could be a reflection of their own inherent wildness, a fundamental rejection of human order and peace, which they may see as stagnant and false. This capacity for chaos extends to the individual human mind through a terrifying phenomenon known as Tengu Tsuki, or Tengu madness. This is not mere confusion. It is a full spiritual possession. A person, often someone with latent pride or ambition, could be seized by a Tengu's influence. They might suddenly exhibit incredible swordsmanship or arcane knowledge they never learned, only to just as suddenly collapse into raving insanity, shouting blasphemies or uttering prophecies of doom. The victim becomes a puppet, their body and mind a temporary vessel for a spirit that is neither fully demon nor fully God, but a raw force of the mountains given a terrible, conscious will. So the same being that can guard sacred truth can also orchestrate national ruin, and the same power that forges a legendary warrior can shatter an ordinary mind. This duality is the very heart of the Tengu. They are not simply good or evil. They are a manifestation of the wild world itself, capable of sublime wisdom and terrifying destruction in the same breath. This complex relationship finds its ultimate expression in the secretive world of Shujendo, a spiritual path where the mountain itself is the temple. The Yamabushi, the mountain ascetics who follow this demanding way, do not see the Tengu as demons to be feared, but as the ultimate masters to be sought. They venture into the very domains we just described, the sacred peaks of Kurama and Yashino, not to conquer, but to submit. Their goal is to undergo a radical transformation, to strip away their human ego and merge with the powerful, unforgiving spirit of the mountain. And who better to guide them through this brutal, beautiful process than the Tengu, the mountain's true sovereigns? The Yamabushi even mimic the Tengu's appearance, wearing the same tiny black caps and distinct robes you see on statues of the great Tengu. This is not mere costume, it is a declaration, a symbolic plea that says, "I am here to learn, accept me as your student." Their training is legendary and severe. They stand under freezing waterfalls in the dead of winter, chant mantras on precarious cliffsides, and walk for days without food through trackless forests. All of this is done to break the illusion of the comfortable, civilized self, and at every step, they feel the presence of their otherworldly instructors. A Yamabushi might be navigating a treacherous ridge in thick fog, only to find a mysterious, red-faced figure standing calmly ahead of him on a path that should not exist. This is the Tengu as test giver. It will not attack, but it will challenge. It might ask a riddle about the nature of emptiness, or demand a demonstration of a specific esoteric mudra, a hand gesture of power. Failure is not met with violence, but with a deeper, more terrifying consequence, being spiritually lost. The mountain itself might seem to turn against the failed student, the trails shifting, the familiar landmarks vanishing, until the ascetic is forced to confront his own ignorance and pride. But success, proving one's sincerity and resilience, can lead to the greatest reward. The Tengu are said to be the secret source of the Yamabushi's most powerful abilities. They impart knowledge of mystical healing, control over the elements, and incredible martial prowess. The legendary warrior Minamoto no Yashitsune, as a young boy named Ushiwakamaru, was famously trained in the sword arts by the great Tengu of Mount Kurama, mastering techniques no human samurai could ever defeat. This is the core of their relationship. The Tengu do not offer easy power, they offer trials that forge a human into something more, a being who can bridge the human and spiritual worlds. The Yamabushi seek not to fight the wild, but to embody its disciplined power, and in doing so, they find the Tengu are not their enemies, but their most demanding and revered teachers. Deep within the sacred forests of Mount Kurama, a boy's destiny was being rewritten by a being that was not human. His name was Ushiwaka Maru, a young prince exiled from his family and hidden away in a mountain temple for his own safety. But the temple's peaceful doctrines could not contain his restless spirit. Night after night, he would slip away into the darkened woods, drawn by a force he could not name, to a secluded clearing where the air hummed with ancient power. There he would practice with a wooden sword, his small frame moving with a fury that hinted at the legendary warrior he would become, Minamoto no Yashitsune. One evening, as the boy trained under a sliver of moon, a figure emerged from the shadows. He was immense, with a face as red as embers, and a nose so long it seemed to pierce the very stillness of the night. This was Sujobo, the undisputed king of the Tengu, the master of this mountain domain. He had been watching. He saw not just a boy's frustration, but a vessel ready to be filled with the mountain's own ruthless art of war. Why would the great Tengu king take a personal interest in a human child? The answer lies in the Tengu's complex role as guardians of balance. The world below was descending into chaos, a time when a truly peerless warrior would be needed to reshape the nation. Sujobo saw in Ushiwaka Maru the raw material for such a man. The training that followed was not of this world. Sujobo did not teach him simple sword strokes. He taught him how to move like the mountain wind, unpredictable and impossible to grasp. He revealed the secrets of strategy by having the boy observe the battles between ants and spiders on the forest floor. He drilled him in techniques that made him a phantom on the battlefield, able to leap and spin with a speed that defied human limits. The legendary sword style Yashitsune mastered, which would later cut down dozens of his enemies with effortless grace, was a gift from the Tengu, a martial art born from the wild intelligence of the forest itself. This was more than just combat instruction. It was a complete reforging of a human soul with the essence of the wild. When Yashitsune finally descended from Mount Kurama, he was no longer just a boy. He was a living extension of the Tengu's will, a storm of strategic genius and impossible swordsmanship that would help his clan seize control of Japan. His legendary victories are, in essence, the Tengu's victories, a demonstration of what happens when a human willingly accepts the harsh, transformative tutelage of the mountain. The story of Yashitsune and Sujobo cemented the Tengu's legacy not as mere tricksters, but as the ultimate masters of strategy and the forge upon which heroes are made. That legendary long nose is far more than a physical oddity. It is a contradiction carved in flesh, a symbol that holds two opposing truths in a single, striking form. On one hand, the long nose represents the very essence of arrogance. In Japanese culture, to say someone has a long nose is to accuse them of being boastful, prideful, and consumed by their own self-importance. The Daitengu, with its nose sometimes described as long as a small staff, is the ultimate embodiment of this sin. It is a being so powerful, so ancient, and so knowledgeable that it stands apart, its gaze turned inward in supreme confidence. This is the danger of untempered wisdom, the spiritual vanity of a master who has forgotten the value of a student's humility, but to see only the pride is to miss the deeper meaning entirely. This same prominent feature is a powerful antenna for perception. Just as a long nose has more surface area to detect the faintest scents in the forest, the Tengu's nose symbolizes an ability to perceive what others cannot. It can sniff out a lie from a mile away, It can sense the spiritual corruption in a hypocritical monk or the hidden potential in a restless boy like Yashitsune. This is a representation of heightened spiritual insight, an almost supernatural awareness of the truths that lie beneath the surface of the world. So, is the nose a symbol of arrogant blindness or of profound sight? The answer is that it is both. The Tengu possesses a form of wisdom that is raw, potent, and completely detached from human concerns of modesty. Its knowledge is as sharp and as prominent as its own face. This is a distorted wisdom, a mountaintop understanding that has never been humbled in the valleys of human suffering. It is the reason the Tengu can be both a revered teacher and a ruthless trickster. It values truth and power above all else, including compassion. The fan it often carries, the ha-achua, is the perfect counterbalance to this pride. With a single flap, that fan can shorten the long nose, symbolically curtailing its arrogance. It is a reminder that even the Tengu's supreme wisdom has limits and must sometimes be reined in. This duality is the core of its mystery. The next time you see the image of a Tengu, look at that nose. See it not as a simple mask, but as a question. Are you looking at a symbol of foolish vanity, or are you in the presence of a perception so keen it sees straight through your soul? This long nose and piercing gaze are backed by a supernatural arsenal that makes the Tengu masters of their mountain realms. Their abilities are not random magic, but a focused expression of their wild, untamable nature. The most obvious of these is flight. Their powerful wings are not just for travel. A Tengu soaring above the canopy sees the world from a divine perspective, observing human follies and natural patterns invisible from the ground. This aerial vantage point grants them a strategic genius that they impart to chosen students, allowing them to perceive the flow of battle like a map laid out at their feet. But when they wish to walk among humans unseen, they employ their most deceptive power, shape-shifting. A Tengu can fold its wings and twist its form, becoming a wandering monk, a beautiful woman, or even a humble traveler seeking shelter. In one famous tale, a Tengu transformed into a perfectly ordinary wooden bowl, sitting innocently in a monastery's kitchen for days, simply to listen to the gossip of the monks and gauge their spiritual worth. This ability to become anything, from a person to a simple object, makes them the ultimate spies and tricksters, their true identity hidden behind a flawless illusion. Their command over the elements is equally profound, with a particular affinity for wind and storms. A sudden gale that extinguishes lanterns and rips the roofs from the huts of arrogant lumberjacks is rarely a coincidence. It is the mountain's breath channeled through the will of its winged guardian. The Tengu can summon mists to confuse travelers, or whirlwinds to carry away those who disrespect their domain. This control is most famously focused through their iconic tool, the ha-achua, the seven-feather fan. In its simplest use, a single wave can generate a hurricane-force wind, capable of sweeping an entire army off a mountainside. But its true power is far more subtle and profound. This fan is the instrument of transformation. It is said a Tengu can use it to shorten its own long nose, a symbolic act of reigning in its pride or disguising its true nature. Conversely, the fan can be used to lengthen the noses of vain and arrogant humans, physically branding them with the symbol of their own folly for all the world to see. This is not just a punishment, it is a brutal, tangible lesson in humility. So their flight grants them perspective, their shape-shifting allows for interaction and deception, and their control of the wind embodies their role as enforcers of the natural order. These are not random powers. They are the essential tools of a being that exists as both a teacher and a trickster, a guardian and a god of chaos, whose very nature demands we question what we see and respect the wild forces we cannot control. These moral lessons were carved not just in legend, but into the very pages of Japan's first great story collections. To truly understand the Tengu's early role in the human imagination, we must turn to the Kenjaku Monogatari, a vast treasury of tales compiled in the late Heian period. Within its scrolls, the Tengu is not a mountain king training heroes, but a stark and terrifying warning for the spiritual elite. Here, They appear most frequently as fallen monks or arrogant priests who have been horrifically transformed. A holy man who spent his life cultivating spiritual power only to succumb to the sin of pride in his final moments might not achieve the enlightenment he sought. Instead, he could be reborn as a Tengu, his soul trapped in a monstrous form that perfectly mirrors his inner corruption. These stories are not adventures. They are Buddhist moral allegories, chilling reminders that the path to hell is paved with holy intentions twisted by ego. In one famous account, a highly respected abbot dies. His disciples mourn a saint, but soon his ghostly voice is heard wailing from the deep forests around the temple. He reveals his terrible fate. He had been so proud of his own piety, so certain of his superior standing, that this hidden arrogance had condemned him. He did not become a demon of the wild had become his prison. His new form, a winged creature with a raging spirit, was the direct consequence of his spiritual failure. Why would these tales focus so intently on punishing the clergy? This was a period where the Buddhist establishment held immense political and social power, and with that power came the inevitable risk of corruption. The Tengu served as a supernatural check on this authority. They were the narrative embodiment of a crucial question: how can a man teach others to overcome desire if he is secretly consumed by his own? The long nose in these contexts is not a symbol of wisdom. It is a physical brand, a permanent, protruding sign of the ego that the monk failed to conquer. So when you read these ancient stories, the Tengu is far more than a forest spirit. It is a cosmic consequence. It is the shape of pride itself, given wings and set loose in the mountains as a perpetual lesson for anyone who would seek power without first mastering the self. The stage of a no theater is a world of shadows and symbolism where spirits and humans meet in a dance of profound meaning. Here, the Tengu found a new home, stepping out of the mountain mists and into the stark spotlight of human drama. In the solemn, haunting performances of No, the Tengu is a being of immense, often tragic, power. A central play, Kurama Tengu, shows us the great King Sujobo not as a mere trainer, but as a lonely sovereign burdened by his own wisdom. The actor wears a specific mask, the tabide, characterized by fierce expression, bulging eyes, and a powerfully hooked nose that evokes both a bird of prey and a wrathful deity. His costume is a cascade of rich brocades, his movements slow, deliberate, and heavy with the weight of centuries. He is a god confronting his own isolation, a figure who commands the wind and the woods yet cannot escape the drama of the human world he influences. This theatrical representation elevates the Tengu from folklore into high art, framing its struggle as a deeply spiritual one. But then the curtain falls and the Kyogen farce begins. Kyogen is the comic relief sandwiched between the serious No acts, and here the Tengu is turned completely on its head. In plays like Tengu no Dairy or the Tengu's Summons, the mighty mountain spirit becomes a laughable buffoon. A bragging Tengu might get its long nose stuck in a tree while showing off its flying skills, or be tricked by a clever commoner into giving up its magical fan. The Kyogen mask is often more exaggerated and comical, the acting is broad and physical, and the mighty enforcer of karma is reduced to a prankster who gets a taste of his own medicine. Why would the same culture present this being in two such opposite ways? The No play appeals to our awe, exploring the profound loneliness and responsibility of ultimate power. The Kyogen farce appeals to our relief, cutting that same power down to size with laughter. Together, they perform a crucial cultural function. They teach that even the most fearsome spirits are subject to the universal laws of cause and effect, and that humor is a powerful tool for taming our fear of the unknown. The theater became a crucible where the Tengu's complex nature was refined, showing audiences that true power lies not in being above it all, but in understanding both the sublime and the ridiculous within ourselves. A Tengu's power is woven into the very fabric of its being, and that fabric is its hagoromo, the legendary feather robe. This is no simple garment. It is a concentration of the spirit's essence, the source of its ability to ride the wind and command the skies. To possess the robe is to possess the Tengu's freedom, a fact that has tempted more than one clever human into a dangerous game of theft. One famous folktale tells of a woodsman who, wandering near a mountain stream, stumbled upon a breathtaking sight. Several Tengu had left their feather robes hanging on a pine branch while they bathed in the cool water, their majestic forms shimmering in the dappled light. Overcome by a mix of greed and wonder, the woodsman quietly snatched one of the robes and fled back to his village, hiding his impossible prize. Without its Hagoromo, a Tengu is earthbound, trapped in a form it cannot escape. The spirit, desperate and humiliated, had no choice but to follow the man's scent and approach the human world it so often mocked. It appeared at the woodsman's door not as a terrifying demon, but as a diminished figure pleading for the return of its very soul. This began a delicate and tense negotiation. The woodsman, now holding all the power, could have demanded anything: gold, immortality, secret knowledge. But the Tengu, despite its weakened state, was not without leverage. It could still curse the man's family, blight his crops, or whisper nightmares into his sleep for the rest of his days. The resolution of these tales is never a simple victory for either side. It is a contract. The Tengu, in exchange for its robe, might teach the man a powerful healing spell, reveal the location of a hidden medicinal spring, or promise protection for his village. The human gains a tangible blessing, but only by returning the source of the spirit's power. What does this recurring story truly mean? On one level, it is a warning against the theft of sacred things, a reminder that some powers are not meant for human hands. But on a deeper level, it explores a profound theme of negotiation between our world and the wild. The human does not conquer the Tengu through force. He forces a dialogue. The Tengu, in turn, does not obliterate the human for his audacity. It is compelled to acknowledge him, to barter with him, to assign a value to its own divine nature. The Hagoromo becomes a token of exchange, forcing a temporary, fragile parity between the mortal and the supernatural. The robe's return restores the natural order, but the interaction leaves both parties forever changed. The human gains a piece of the mountain's secret wisdom, and the Tengu learns a hard lesson in human cunning, a lesson that only deepens the mystery surrounding these magnificent, vulnerable, and endlessly complex spirits. This legacy of supernatural instruction echoes in the sharp ring of steel on steel. The Tengu's influence did not end with ancient heroes like Yashitsune. It became woven into the very fabric of Japanese swordsmanship, giving rise to a legendary concept known as Tengu Jeijutsu, the Tengu art. This was not a formal school or style you could learn in a public dojo. It was a label reserved for a swordsman whose skill was so preternatural, so fluid and unpredictable that it seemed to defy human limitation. To witness Tengu Jeijutsu was to see a fighter who moved with the mountain wind itself, his blade an extension of a will that was not entirely his own. His techniques were not just effective, they were eerily beautiful, a deadly dance that left opponents disarmed and bewildered, convinced they had not been bested by a man, but by a spirit of the forest. How could a mere mortal attain such a level of mastery? The answer often lay in dreams and solitary vigils. Countless legends speak of master swordsmen, after years of exhausting their human teachers, retreating to sacred mountains or spending nights in intense meditation, seeking a breakthrough. In this liminal state between waking and sleep, the Tengu would arrive. It might appear as the classic red-faced Yamabushi, or simply as a disembodied voice in a vivid dream. In these encounters, the master would receive a single, perfect form, a secret technique that solved a lifelong strategic dilemma. One famous tale tells of a swordsman who, after being defeated, climbed a mountain and fasted for 7 days. On the final night, a Tengu appeared to him in a vision and demonstrated a single, twisting parry and countercut. This was not a complex sequence, but a fundamental repositioning of the body and blade that made all previous attacks obsolete. The swordsman descended at dawn, practiced the single movement until it was ingrained in his muscle memory, and easily defeated his former rival. The technique felt less like something he learned and more like a truth that had been unlocked within him. This was the essence of Tengu Jeijutsu, a transcendent skill granted directly from the masters of strategic wisdom, a reminder that the highest arts are not invented, but received by those humble and determined enough to ask the mountain for its secrets. Their mastery of illusion makes them the ultimate judges of human character, appearing in whatever form will most effectively expose a person's hidden flaws or virtues. One chilling folktale tells of a lonely woodcutter living deep in the mountains. One evening, he returned to his hut to find his own wife waiting for him, welcoming him with a warm meal just as she always had. But something felt wrong. Her smile was a little too sharp. Her eyes held a glint he did not recognize. This was no reunion. The Tengu had studied the man's heart, knew his deepest loneliness, and crafted the perfect illusion to test him. It spoke with his wife's voice, recalled their private memories, yet its conversation was subtly designed to lure the woodcutter into revealing his greed or his fear. The slightest hint of suspicion, the smallest act of cruelty, and the illusion would have shattered to reveal a furious, winged spirit. But if the man showed unwavering love and integrity, even to a phantom, the Tengu might depart as silently as it came, leaving behind a single black feather as a sign of respect for a heart it could not corrupt. In another tale, the Tengu transforms into a wandering Buddhist monk, arriving at a remote village temple. He presents himself as a humble traveler seeking alms, but his true purpose is to audit the local priest. The Tengu monk engages the holy man in a deep debate about scripture, posing questions that seem simple on the surface but contain profound spiritual traps. A priest who is proud of his own knowledge might give a long, arrogant answer, only to find the visiting monk's nose begin to twitch and elongate in response. A truly compassionate and humble priest, however, would answer with sincerity rather than showmanship, and the disguised Tengu would bow deeply, its form flickering for a moment to reveal a glimmer of its true, majestic self before departing. The lesson was clear: spiritual authority means nothing without a matching character. The Tengu did not care about theological perfection, it cared about the authenticity of the human soul behind the words. Perhaps the most disorienting of their deceptions is when they impersonate the Buddha himself. There are accounts of monks deep in meditation who see a brilliant light and a radiant, golden figure offering them profound teachings and promises of instant enlightenment. This is the Tengu's ultimate test, the temptation of a spiritual shortcut. To accept this false vision is to fall into the trap of pride, to believe one is worthy of a divine visitation. The monk who clings to his humble practice, who recognizes that true enlightenment cannot be given but must be earned, sees the glorious Buddha morph back into the sharp-feathered, grinning face of the Tengu. The spirit vanishes, leaving behind not anger, but a strange approval. The deception was a gift, a harsh but necessary lesson that the most dangerous illusions are the ones we most desperately want to believe. This shape-shifting nature forces a fundamental question. If a Tengu can perfectly mimic anyone you know and love, or any spiritual figure you revere, how can you ever be certain of what is real? Their greatest trick is not simply changing their own form, but forever altering our trust in the world we perceive. Away from the great sacred peaks, the Tengu's character twists and turns with the local landscape. In the isolated villages of Shikoku, the spirits are often seen as surprisingly benevolent neighbors. One story from Eheim Prefecture tells of a Tengu who took pity on a struggling farming community during a terrible drought. Night after night, the farmers would hear the rhythmic scraping of wood from the forest. Venturing out at dawn, they would find their broken tools miraculously repaired and their dried-out fields subtly channeled with new, tiny waterways that caught the morning dew. This was not the work of a mountain king, but of a community guardian, a spirit so integrated with the human world that its well-being became his own. The villagers in gratitude would leave small offerings of rice and salt at the forest's edge, a quiet pact of mutual respect, yet travel north to the harsh, snowy mountains of the Dua Sanzan, and you find a completely different kind of lord. Here, the Tengu are fierce, territorial, and demand absolute adherence to ancient rules. They govern the purity of the sacred peaks with an iron will. A hunter who takes more game than he needs, or a traveler who disrespects a shrine, might find himself trapped in a sudden, blinding snowstorm, a clear sign of the mountain's displeasure. The local Tengu here is less a trickster and more a stern, unforgiving warden of a divine prison, its long nose sniffing out any impurity that dares to enter its domain. Why such a stark contrast? The geography itself provides the answer. In the gentle, life-sustaining valleys of Shikoku, the relationship with nature is one of cooperation. The Tengu reflects this, becoming a partner in survival. In the unforgiving alpine world of the Dua Sanzan, nature is a brutal, purifying force that demands submission. The Tengu there embodies that harsh, judgmental power. Even their appearances shift with the local culture. On the Kiai Peninsula, some folktales describe Tengu with features resembling the masks used in local Kagura dances, linking them directly to village festival traditions. Up in Tohoku, other tales speak of spirits with forms half made of ice and rock. These are not contradictions in the Tengu's nature, they are proof of its profound adaptability. The spirit becomes what the people in the land need it to be, a protector, a punisher, or a participant in local custom. This regional tapestry reveals a profound truth. The Tengu is not a single, monolithic entity, but a fluid concept shaped by the very human fears, hopes, and relationships with the wild that define each unique corner of Japan. A world away from the solemn no stage, the Tengu found a vibrant new life in the bustling, colorful streets of Edo. Here, in the popular art of ukiyo-e, the mountain spirit was reborn as a print shop superstar. The woodblock prints of masters like Yoshitoshi and Kuniyoshi captured the Tengu not as a remote, fearsome deity, but as a character of immense energy and personality, often caught in scenes of dramatic action or outright comedy. In one famous print by Kuniyoshi, the great Tengu king Sujobo is depicted not in a lonely mountain fastness, but in a chaotic, swirling brawl with a mischievous fox spirit. His majestic red face is contorted in a comical expression of rage, his long nose jabbing through the fray as he brandishes his sacred fan like a club. This was a Tengu for the common people, a figure of power who is also relatable, even laughable, a participant in the wild and entertaining dramas of the everyday world. Why did this transformation happen? The Edo period was an era of peace and burgeoning merchant culture. With major wars a thing of the past, the terrifying, war-inciting aspect of the Tengu lost its edge. The spirit was free to evolve, becoming a subject for mass entertainment and artistic imagination. Yoshitoshi, in his series 100 Aspects of the Moon, portrayed a Tengu receiving a formal letter of challenge from a legendary warrior. The composition is breathtakingly dynamic. The Tengu's wings spread wide against a luminous moon, yet its expression is one of thoughtful consideration, almost like a general weighing his options. This depiction perfectly captures the dual nature the public adored, the being of awesome power who also engages in the very human rituals of honor and conflict. These prints were not expensive fine art for the elite. They were the posters and comic books of their day, affordable and widely circulated. Seeing the mighty Tengu in a humorous tangle or a dramatic pose made the spirit accessible. It demystified the mountain lords without diminishing their power, instead integrating them into the vibrant tapestry of urban folklore. The long nose was no longer just a symbol of pride or perception, it was a fantastic visual element that artists could use to create striking silhouettes and comical expressions. The ukiyo-e Tengu became a cultural fixture, a beloved character whose image was sold in shops and pasted on walls, ensuring that the winged spirit of the mountains remained firmly planted in the hearts and imaginations of the city dwellers. That red-faced king of the mountain, once confined to sacred scrolls and temple carvings, has now taken flight into the global imagination. The Tengu's journey into modern pop culture is a story of radical reinvention, where the fierce guardian of the wild has been recast as everything from a superhero to a friendly neighborhood mascot. In the dynamic world of manga and anime, these spirits have found a particularly vibrant new home. They are often portrayed as powerful mentors or formidable allies, their ancient wisdom and martial prowess perfectly suited for epic storylines. A modern shonen hero might not climb Mount Kurama, but he could easily be trained by a Tengu sensei who teaches him to harness the wind itself. This portrayal preserves their core identity as masters of esoteric power while softening their terrifying edges for a new generation. Video games have taken this transformation even further, turning the Tengu into both playable characters and iconic bosses. Gamers can now step into the wings of these beings, commanding their signature control over storms and wielding their long-nosed masks as a badge of unique power. In some games, they are noble guardians of digital forests, while in others, they are chaotic forces of nature that players must either defeat or appease. This interactive experience allows people to engage directly with the Tengu mythos, not as passive listeners to a folktale, but as active participants in their legendary domain. But perhaps the most surprising evolution is their role in commerce. The once dreaded spirit has been thoroughly commercialized, its fearsome visage now smiling from product packaging and town welcome signs. You can find Tengu keychains, Tengu-themed snacks, and even entire towns that use the long-nosed countenance as a friendly mascot to promote tourism. The sharp, intimidating features are rounded into a cute, approachable caricature, transforming a symbol of divine judgment into a symbol of local charm and pride. Why has this happened? The modern world has largely tamed the wilderness that the Tengu once embodied. We are no longer at the mercy of the mountain's sudden storms or its hidden spirits. This cultural shift has allowed the Tengu to shed its role as a punisher of arrogance and instead become a beloved keeper of tradition, a nostalgic link to a wilder, more mysterious Japan. Its image is now a flexible icon, capable of representing everything from untamable nature to quirky local character. So the next time you see that long-nosed face on a bottle of sake or in a blockbuster video game, remember you are looking at the latest incarnation of a being that has constantly evolved for over 1,000 years, proving that even the most ancient spirits must learn to fly in new skies. That same wild spirit guarding the sacred groves now speaks to a modern crisis. The ancient tales of Tengu punishing arrogant lumberjacks and boastful samurai are more than just folklore. They are a profound ecological warning system encoded in myth. These stories articulate a fundamental law that the mountain is a living, conscious entity, and to harm it is to invite a swift and absolute reckoning. This worldview represents a sophisticated, pre-scientific form of environmentalism, one where nature is not a resource to be managed, but a sovereign power to be respected. The Tengu were the enforcers of this natural contract, their wrath serving as the direct consequence for humanity's greed and pride. When a spirit conjures a whirlwind to scatter those who defile ancient trees, it is a narrative embodiment of an ecosystem's collapse, a dramatic representation of landslides, erosion, and the loss of habitat that follows reckless deforestation. The long nose that sniffs out corruption in a monk can also be seen as a symbol for sensing the sickness in a forest, the spiritual pollution that precedes physical decay. In our modern context, the Tengu's legendary role translates into a powerful argument for the protection of wild spaces. These spirits did not inhabit just any patch of woods. They claimed the most pristine, spiritually potent mountains as their sanctuaries. This establishes a sacred geography, a map of places that are intrinsically valuable beyond their timber or mineral wealth. Their presence declared these areas off-limits to exploitation, preserving them through fear and reverence. Today, we struggle to assign value to an old-growth forest that we cannot cut down or a wild river we cannot dam. The Tengu mythos provides that value in a different currency, the currency of mystery, power, and spiritual necessity. It argues that some places must remain wild because they are the homes of forces we do not fully understand, forces that maintain a balance essential to our own survival. The modern environmental movement seeks to protect biodiversity and combat climate change, goals that would have made perfect sense to the storytellers who warned of the Tengu's fury. The spirit's legendary feather fan, which could summon storms, is a mythical parallel to our understanding of how the destruction of forests alters weather patterns and leads to more violent storms. The tales were a way of communicating complex ecological principles through a language of immediate, visceral consequence. So the next time you walk through a protected forest or hear a call to preserve a wild landscape, listen closely. You might just hear the rustle of dark wings in the canopy above, a timeless reminder that the mountain has always had its guardians, and we ignore their ancient laws at our own peril. So you find yourself on a lonely mountain path as the light begins to fade, and you feel a distinct, unsettling presence watching you from the deep woods. If you suspect a Tengu is near, your survival may depend on a simple, ancient code of conduct. The first and most vital rule is to master your own pride. Do not, under any circumstance, challenge the unseen or boast of your own courage. A Tengu is a master of perception, and it will sense arrogance like a foul odor. If you hear a strange voice calling your name or see a flicker of movement, do not shout or throw a stone in its direction. Such an act is a direct insult, a human declaring war on the mountain itself. Instead, you must show immediate and sincere respect. A low, non-threatening bow in the general direction of the presence is appropriate. Do not stare intently into the shadows, trying to glimpse it, as this can be seen as a hostile act of scrutiny. Your goal is to be a respectful passerby, not a curious investigator. Your behavior should communicate that you acknowledge its authority and are merely requesting safe passage through its domain. It is equally critical to avoid disturbing its territory. Do not break branches unnecessarily, pollute a stream, or pocket stones from a sacred-looking clearing. Every action is being weighed on an invisible scale. If you have any food, a small, humble offering left on a flat rock or at the base of an ancient tree can be a powerful gesture of goodwill. This is not a bribe, but a token of respect, an acknowledgement that you are a guest in its home. Then you should continue on your way calmly and deliberately. Do not run, as flight can trigger a predator's instinct to chase. The Tengu may still choose to test you, perhaps by making the path loop back on itself or by conjuring a thick, disorienting mist. If this happens, do not panic and do not curse your luck. Your reaction to this trickery is the final exam. Maintain your composure, keep your mind clear, and continue to move with purpose. Your perseverance and respect for the mountain's power are your true guides. To fail these tests, to act with pride or fear, is to risk a fate far worse than mere confusion. You could become a permanent lesson in the consequences of arrogance, a lost soul forever wandering the border between the human world and the Tengu's wild, untamable kingdom. This complex web of Japanese belief did not emerge in a vacuum. We can see the Tengu's reflection in mythical beings from across the world, revealing a shared human impulse to personify the wild's untamable power. Look to the skies of Hindu and Buddhist tradition and you will find Garuda, a massive, divine, eagle-like being. Like the Tengu, Garuda is a king of birds, a master of the wind, and a fierce guardian. Both serve as mounts or messengers for higher gods, bridging the celestial and earthly realms, yet their core natures diverge sharply. Garuda is ultimately a noble and devoted figure in the cosmic order, while the Tengu remains a morally ambiguous trickster, its loyalty reserved for the mountain's own inscrutable laws. This contrast highlights the Tengu's uniquely Japanese character, a spirit that resists easy categorization as either purely benevolent or malevolent. Journey to the forests of Eastern Europe, and you might encounter the Leshy, the Slavic lord of the woods. This spirit shares the Tengu's role as a territorial guardian who punishes those who disrespect its domain. Both can shapeshift, control the weather, and lead travelers astray in their own realms, but the Leshy is often portrayed as more directly tied to the forest's physical form, sometimes even having a body made of bark and leaves, while the Tengu embodies the mountain's more abstract, spiritual intelligence. Then there are the magnificent thunderbirds of many Native American traditions. These colossal, winged spirits command the storms, their wing beats creating thunder and their flashing eyes generating lightning. This mastery over wind and storm is a power we see clearly in the Tengu's legendary feather fan. Both are seen as immensely powerful, awe-inspiring forces of nature. Yet the thunderbird is often depicted as a more direct and righteous protector of humanity against monstrous serpents, whereas the Tengu's protection is conditional, granted only to those who prove themselves worthy through humility and respect. What do these global parallels tell us? They point to a universal archetype, a being that represents the sovereign spirit of a place. From the deepest forest to the highest mountain, human cultures have consistently envisioned a conscious, powerful intelligence presiding over the wild. The Tengu is Japan's brilliant and nuanced answer to this deep-seated human understanding, a creature that perfectly captures the beautiful, dangerous, and profoundly intelligent character of its own sacred landscape. These powerful stories are not merely entertainment, they are a complex moral and philosophical code delivered by a long-nosed teacher who demands we look inward. At the heart of this code is a stark warning against spiritual arrogance. The fallen monk, reborn as a Tengu for his hidden pride, is the ultimate cautionary tale. It teaches that the pursuit of enlightenment is a path riddled with traps, and the most dangerous trap is the belief that one has already reached the end. Knowledge without humility is a distorted power, a wisdom that blinds rather than illuminates. This is why the Tengus long nose is such a perfect symbol. It represents the ego, grotesquely inflated and impossible to ignore. The spirit itself is a walking lesson on the corrupting nature of untempered knowledge. How many of us in our own lives have encountered someone so convinced of their own rightness that they become incapable of true learning? The Tengu is that fate made manifest in myth. It shows us that the goal is not to accumulate power, but to master the self. This is where the second great lesson emerges, the immense value of rigorous self-discipline. The Yamabushi ascetic does not climb the mountain to conquer it, but to be broken down and rebuilt by its harsh realities. His freezing waterfall meditations and long, foodless treks are not acts of punishment. They are a systematic dismantling of the comfortable ego, a process of forging a will strong enough to handle true power without being corrupted by it. The Tengu, as his master, provides the tests, but the ascetic must supply the relentless discipline. It is a partnership that reveals power is not given, it is earned through unwavering commitment and personal sacrifice. This discipline naturally extends to our relationship with the natural world. The Tengu's fierce guardianship of its mountain domain imparts a third, crucial lesson: respect for nature is not a suggestion, it is a fundamental law. The samurai punished for cutting sacred trees are not victims of a random monster. They face the consequences of a broken contract. The mountain is a conscious, living entity, and the Tengu is the embodiment of its wrath and its balance. This folklore presents an ancient, ecological wisdom that human arrogance towards the environment will inevitably trigger a corrective response. We are not separate from nature, we are a part of its delicate balance, and the Tengu exists to remind us of our place. All these threads weave together to illuminate the Tengu's most profound philosophical puzzle, the terrifyingly thin line between wisdom and pride. The great Daitengu is the most knowledgeable being in the forest, a master of strategy and esoteric truth. Yet that very mastery is what makes it so prideful and isolated. Its wisdom is its greatest asset and its tragic flaw. This is the paradox the myths force us to confront. Can true wisdom ever exist without humility? The Tengus fan, which can shorten its own nose, hints at the answer. It suggests that even the most powerful must learn to curtail their own arrogance, that self-awareness is the final and most difficult lesson. The stories ask us, what good is all the knowledge in the world if it only serves to build a taller wall between you and everything else? The Tengu's ultimate lesson is a challenge to walk that razor's edge, to seek power while mastering pride, to pursue knowledge while respecting the vast unknown, and to understand that true strength lies not in domination, but in harmonious balance. That label of goblin is a modern cage for a spirit that refuses to be contained. To call a Tengu a simple monster is to miss the entire point of its existence, flattening a profound cultural and spiritual symbol into a cartoonish villain. These beings are not universally evil, nor are they the straightforward demons early Buddhist texts made them out to be. Their entire story is one of transformation and contradiction, a dual nature that reflects our own complicated relationship with power, pride, and the wilderness. Think of them not as a single type of creature, but as a spectrum of spiritual expression from the raw, crow-like enforcers of the forest to the solitary, red-faced masters of esoteric wisdom. This complexity is rooted in a very specific religious context, the ancient and ongoing dialogue in Japan between the imported traditions of Buddhism and the native, animistic faith of Shinto. The Tengu emerged right at the friction point between these two worldviews. Buddhism, with its structured paths to enlightenment, saw the untamed, powerful spirits of the mountains as a threat, labeling them as corruptors and tempters. Shinto, however, reveres the kami, the sacred spirits that inhabit natural features like ancient trees, waterfalls, and the very mountains the Tengu call home. So, is the Tengu a Buddhist demon or a Shinto kami? The breathtaking answer is that it is both and neither. It exists in the liminal space between these two spiritual forces, embodying the tension between structured doctrine and wild, innate power. This is why they can be both punishing tricksters and revered teachers. They do not follow a human concept of good and evil. They enforce a much older law, the balance of the natural and spiritual worlds. Their famous long nose is the perfect symbol for this. It is not merely a funny feature, it is a spiritual instrument, sniffing out the faintest scent of human hypocrisy and pride, regardless of whether that person is a saint or sinner. To reduce such a multifaceted being to a simple goblin is to silence 1,000 years of story and meaning. The next time you see that long-nosed face, remember you are not looking at a monster. You are looking at a question, a challenge posed by the wild itself, asking us what we truly value, and whether our own pride might be the greatest illusion of all. The path up Mount Kurama is a journey out of time, a stone staircase winding through a canopy of ancient cedars so dense the sunlight fractures into emerald shards. Each step takes you deeper into the Tengu's realm, the air growing cooler and charged with a silence that feels more like listening than an absence of sound. Your destination is the Kurama Dera Temple, not a single building, but a complex nestled into the mountain's body, a testament to the fusion of Buddhism and the wild spirit of this place. Here you will find the most famous Tengu statue of all, a depiction of the great King Sujobo himself. He is not hidden away, but positioned as a guardian, his fierce red face and long nose a permanent reminder of who truly holds sovereignty here. Visitors do not merely look at this statue, they stand before it in quiet acknowledgement, a gesture of respect to the mountain's master. Further along the path, you will come to the Yuki Jinyu Shrine, a smaller, more primal site dedicated to the mountain's original kami. It is here, surrounded by towering trees and the faint scent of damp earth and moss, that the presence of the old gods feels strongest. The atmosphere is one of immense age and watchfulness, as if the forest itself is holding its breath. To walk this path is to understand that the temples and shrines are not impositions on the wilderness, but offerings to it, attempts to build a bridge into a consciousness far older than any human doctrine. Mount Takao, standing guard near Tokyo, offers a different kind of pilgrimage. While Kurama feels deeply mystical and remote, Takao is vibrant and accessible, a living testament to the Tengu's integration into daily life. The mountain is a bustling center of Shujendo practice, and you will see Yamabushi ascetics on the trails, their distinctive robes and tiny black caps a direct homage to their winged masters. The trail to the Yakuo-in temple is lined with countless Jizo statues, but it is the Tengu that command attention. Two immense statues flank the path, one with the classic long-nosed face of a Daitengu, and the other with the sharp beak of a Karasu Tengu. They are monumental, imposing, and yet welcoming, their faces carved with an expression of fierce benevolence. At the temple, pilgrims participate in the Goma fire ritual, where prayers are offered to Fudomayu, a wrathful deity closely associated with the Tengu. The roaring flames and chanting priests create a palpable energy, a conduit between the human and spiritual worlds. For a more personal connection, visitors can purchase a small wooden plaque, an emma, and write a prayer or wish upon it. These are not hung randomly, they are placed carefully on a special rack right before the Tengu statues, a direct request for the mountain spirit's intercession. The act is simple yet profound, a moment of humility where a modern person asks an ancient power for guidance or protection. To truly feel the Tengu's presence, you must engage with the mountain itself, not just its monuments. Find a quiet spot away from the main paths, perhaps on a moss-covered rock beside a small waterfall or in a clearing where the trees form a natural cathedral. Sit quietly and simply listen. Do not force the experience or demand a sign. Let the sounds of the forest become your focus, the rustle of leaves that could be the wind or could be something more, the distant call of a bird that sounds strangely like a signal. This is the heart of the pilgrimage, a practice of receptive stillness. The Yamabushi believe that the mountain tests you by revealing your own inner noise, your restless thoughts, and hidden pride. As you sit, that mental chatter may slowly subside, and in the spacious silence that follows, a different kind of awareness can dawn. You might feel a sudden, inexplicable shift in the air, a sensation of being intently watched that is not threatening, but assessing. Or you might feel a surge of clarity, as if a question that has plagued you for weeks suddenly has an obvious answer, a gift from the mountain's strategic mind. This is not about seeing a winged figure materialize from the mist. It is about feeling the intelligence of the place, the ancient, watchful consciousness that the Tengu embodies. The pilgrimage is a success not when you see a spirit, but when you leave with the unshakable feeling that the mountain has seen you and has found you worthy of its silence. Our journey through the mists of Mount Kurama and the ancient scrolls of folklore brings us to a final, revealing truth. The Tengu were never a single thing to be unmasked, but a story of constant transformation. They began as celestial omens of war, feared harbingers from the heavens. They were then cast as demonic tempters, the corrupters of holy men in a spiritual battle for the soul of Japan. Yet the wild could not be contained. They evolved into majestic mountain kings, the stern guardians of sacred forests and the pure, untamable truth. And finally, they emerged as the ultimate spiritual mentors, the demanding teachers who forged heroes and ascetics in the crucible of the wilderness. This entire evolution from feared outsider to revered protector is not a simple redemption arc. It is a profound dialogue between humanity and the wild, a thousand-year conversation about the nature of power, pride, and wisdom itself. These myths endure not because they are quaint tales, but because they speak to a universal human tension. We are drawn to the power of the untamed world, yet we fear its indifference. We seek knowledge, yet we are corrupted by the pride that knowledge can bring. The Tengu, in all its contradictory glory, is the embodiment of that struggle. Its long nose forever points to the danger of arrogance, while its majestic wings remind us that true understanding requires a perspective beyond our own. These stories are a bridge to a world view where the mountain is alive, the forest is conscious, and our actions have spiritual consequences that echo through the trees. The next time you walk in a deep wood or look upon a distant, cloud-ringed peak, remember the Tengu. Consider what ancient, watchful intelligence might reside there and what lessons it might have for a world in need of both wisdom and humility. We would love to hear your thoughts. Have you encountered stories of the Tengu or other nature spirits in your own explorations of folklore? Share your experiences and reflections in the comments